The fluorescent lights of the corporate lobby cast harsh shadows across Marcus van der Burg's weathered hands as he gripped his mop handle tighter, watching his 7-year-old daughter Emma skip toward the elevator. Her bright yellow backpack bounced with each step, a stark contrast to the sterile marble and glass surrounding them. This wasn't supposed to be her world. She should be at after-school care, playing with friends, being a kid. Instead, she was here with him at Meridian Financial Tower because he couldn't afford childcare and his night shift was the only job that paid enough to keep their tiny apartment. "Daddy, can I press the button?" Emma's voice echoed in the empty lobby, her Dutch accent still strong despite 3 years in New York. Marcus smiled, the first genuine expression that had crossed his face all day. At least she still found joy in small things. "Of course, Leaf," he replied in Dutch, then caught himself. "I mean, sweetheart, remember, we practice English here." Emma giggled and pressed the button for the 42nd floor where Marcus would spend the next 8 hours cleaning offices while she slept on the small couch in the janitor's storage room. It wasn't ideal, but it was survival. Ever since Anna had died in that car accident 2 years ago, survival was all Marcus knew. The elevator doors opened to reveal a woman in an impeccably tailored navy suit, her silver hair swept into a perfect chignon. She looked exactly like what Marcus imagined when he thought of the executives whose trash he emptied and whose coffee rings he scrubbed from mahogany desks. She glanced at Emma with what appeared to be mild annoyance, then at Marcus's uniform with barely concealed disdain. "Going up," she said curtly, stepping aside just enough to make it clear they were tolerated, not welcomed. Marcus guided Emma into the elevator, keeping his eyes down. 3 years of night janitorial work had taught him that invisibility was his best defense in these towers of power and privilege. The executives lived in a different world, one where problems were solved with phone calls to assistants and where a man like him only existed to maintain the backdrop of their success. The elevator climbed silently until Marcus's phone rang, the generic ringtone embarrassingly loud in the confined space. He fumbled for it, muttering an apology, but stopped when he saw the number. Dr. Richardson's office. Emma's pediatric oncologist. His blood turned to ice. Emma had finished her leukemia treatment 6 months ago, and her last checkup had shown her in complete remission. A call this late could only mean a hello. His voice cracked as he answered. "Mr. van der Burg, this is Dr. Richardson. I'm calling with Emma's latest blood work results." Marcus's knees nearly buckled. Without thinking, he slipped into Dutch, the language of his childhood, the language he spoke when the world became too much to bear in English. Is alles goed met haar?" The words tumbled out desperately. "Is she? Is everything okay with her?" The executive woman's head snapped up, her eyes suddenly focused with laser intensity on Marcus's face. "Her numbers look excellent," Dr. Richardson continued in English. "All markers are normal. I wanted to call tonight because I know how worried you get before these results." Marcus's legs gave out, and he slumped against the elevator wall, tears of relief streaming down his face. "Dankjewel, Doctor." "Dankjewel zoveel." "Thank you, Doctor." "Thank you so much, Daddy." Emma's small hand found his, squeezing tight. "What is gebeurd? What happened?" "Night slechts, Leaf. Alles is good." "Nothing bad, sweetheart." "Everything is good." The elevator dinged softly as they reached the 42nd floor, but the executive woman made no move to leave. Instead, she was staring at Marcus with an expression he couldn't quite read. A surprise, certainly, but something else too. Recognition, perhaps. "You're Dutch," she said quietly, her voice completely transformed from the cold tone she'd used earlier. Marcus wiped his eyes and nodded, embarrassed by his emotional display. "Yes, Mom. I'm sorry about the phone call. It won't happen again." "Don't apologize." Her voice was gentle now, almost wonder-filled. "I haven't heard proper Dutch spoken. It must be 15 years. The elevator doors started to close, but she pressed the hold button. "I'm Margriet Hoffman. I grew up in Amsterdam until I was 12. Marcus blinked in surprise. This powerful, intimidating woman had once been a Dutch child like Emma. "My father moved us here when he started his first company," she continued, her accent now carrying the faintest hint of her origins. "I lost touch with the language, lost touch with—" She paused, looking at Emma, "with what really matters." "Daddy," Emma whispered in Dutch, tugging on his uniform shirt. "Why is the fancy lady crying?" Marcus looked up and realized Emma was right. Margriet Hoffman's perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the tears gathering in her eyes. "I heard you talking to the doctor," she said softly. "Your daughter? She's been sick?" Marcus hesitated. In his experience, wealthy people didn't want to hear about the struggles of people like him. They preferred their service workers to be invisible, uncomplicated, without messy personal lives that might make them uncomfortable. But something in Margriet's face, a vulnerability he hadn't expected, made him answer honestly. "Leukemia," he said quietly. "She finished treatment 6 months ago. Tonight was her latest test results. All clear." Margriet closed her eyes, and for a moment, the powerful executive disappeared entirely, replaced by someone who looked very much like a mother herself. "How old is she?" she asked. 7. "My grandson is 8. Margriet's voice was barely above a whisper. "I haven't seen him in 3 years. His father, my son, and I. We had a falling out over business decisions. I chose the company over family, and now—" She looked at Emma, who was patiently waiting beside her father, tired but still trusting that he would take care of everything. "Now I don't even know if they'd want me in their lives." The elevator had been holding for several minutes now, but Margriet seemed to have forgotten where she was supposed to be going. "Mom," Marcus said gently, "I should let you get to your floor." "Stay," she said suddenly, startling them both. "Please." "I know this is unusual, but would you stay and talk? Just for a few minutes? I know it's your work time, and I can compensate you, but She looked lost, this woman who commanded boardrooms and made decisions worth millions. "I haven't had a real conversation in months. Years, maybe." Marcus glanced at Emma, who was fighting sleep but still standing bravely beside him. He thought about the offices waiting to be cleaned, the security cameras that tracked his every move, the possibility of losing this job that barely kept them afloat. But he also thought about the loneliness in Margriet's voice, so familiar because he heard it in his own every night after Emma fell asleep. The loneliness of survival, of doing what you had to do instead of what you wanted to do, of forgetting who you used to be in the effort to become who you needed to be. "Emma is tired," he said finally. "But there's a break room on this floor with a couch. She could rest the while we talk." Relief flooded Margriet's face. "Thank you." 20 minutes later, Emma was curled up on the break room couch, covered by Marcus's spare uniform shirt, while he and Margriet sat at a small table drinking coffee from the executive kitchen. "Tell me about your wife," Margriet said, and Marcus was surprised to find that for the first time in 2 years, talking about Anna didn't feel like swallowing glass. He told her about their life in Amsterdam, how they'd met at university, their decision to immigrate to America for better opportunities. He told her about Anna's work as a translator, her dreams of writing children's books, her fierce love for Emma that had made her fight the cancer diagnosis right up until the car accident that took her instead. She would have known what to do, Marcus said, staring into his coffee cup. About Emma, about everything. I'm just improvising. You're doing more than that, Marguerite said firmly. You're sacrificing everything for your daughter. Do you know how rare that is? How many parents I know who love their children but love their convenience more, their status, their comfort? Marcus shrugged uncomfortably. It's what parents do. No, Marguerite said with quiet intensity. It's what good parents do. It's what I didn't do. She told him about her son James, how she'd missed his school plays for board meetings, his graduation for a merger in Tokyo, his wedding for a crisis in the London office. How she justified it all by telling herself she was building something for his future, creating a legacy he'd one day inherit and appreciate. But what he inherited was a mother who was never there, she said. And when he tried to change the company's direction, tried to make it more ethical, more focused on people instead of just profit, I fought him. I couldn't see that he'd become a better person than I was, that maybe that was the real success story. It's not too late, Marcus said quietly. Marguerite looked at him with surprise. You think so? After 3 years, Emma asks about her grandmother every week, Marcus said. Anna's mother. They had a terrible fight before we moved here. Something about Anna abandoning her heritage, choosing me over family traditions. Anna was too proud to call, and her mother was too angry. Now Anna's gone, and her mother will never know Emma, will never see what an amazing little girl she is. Time doesn't heal everything, but it makes the stubbornness seem smaller, less important. Marguerite was quiet for a long moment, then asked, what do you miss most about home? Marcus smiled sadly. The way Dutch sounds when Emma speaks it. The way it connects her to her mother, to who we used to be before we became just survivors. She's lucky to have you maintaining that connection. I don't know if I'm maintaining it or losing it, Marcus admitted. Every day here, we speak less Dutch, become less Dutch. I'm so focused on helping her fit in, succeed here, that sometimes I wonder if we're losing the best parts of ourselves. Marguerite reached across the table and touched his hand gently. You know what I heard when you answered that phone call? I heard love. Pure, desperate, protective love. That translates in any language. Marcus felt tears threatening again. When was the last time someone had shown him such kindness, such understanding? I have a proposition for you, Marguerite said suddenly. No, not a proposition, a request. My company has buildings across the city. The headquarters building has better benefits, daycare for employees' children, and we're always looking for maintenance staff who take pride in their work. The salary is better, and she hesitated, then continued, I've been looking for someone to help me with correspondence, someone who speaks Dutch. I have business connections in the Netherlands I've been neglecting. Marcus stared at her. Mom, I don't have any office experience. I'm just a janitor. You're a father who answered a terrifying phone call with such grace that you made a bitter old woman remember what love sounds like, Marguerite said firmly. You're a man who chose to comfort a stranger instead of protecting himself from potential trouble. You're someone who maintained his daughter's heritage while helping her build a new life. That's not just anything. I don't understand. You'd create a position for someone you just met in an elevator. Marguerite laughed, but it wasn't mocking, it was almost wondering. Do you know how many elevator rides I've taken in this building? Thousands. Do you know how many times I've actually seen the person standing next to me, really seen them, heard their story, remembered that they're human. Tonight was the first time in years. She stood up and walked to the window overlooking the city lights. I've spent decades building an empire, and for what? To be alone in a penthouse, surrounded by people who work for me but don't know me, to be estranged from my own son, to have forgotten the language of my childhood, the warmth of real connection. She turned back to Marcus. You reminded me tonight that success without humanity is just expensive loneliness. Maybe working together, we can both remember who we used to be. Marcus looked over at Emma, sleeping peacefully on the couch. Her face relaxed in a way it rarely was during her waking hours anymore. She deserved better than sleeping in janitor's closets and break rooms. She deserved stability, opportunity, a future. But more than that, she deserved to see her father treated with dignity, to grow up knowing that kindness mattered more than status, that people were more important than profit. Would I still be maintenance staff? He asked. You'd be facilities coordinator and executive assistant for international communications, Marguerite said with a slight smile. Which means you'd oversee building maintenance and help me reconnect with my Dutch business partners. It also means health insurance that would cover Emma's ongoing medical needs, and a childcare facility where she could spend time with other children instead of sleeping on office couches. Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years: hope. Not just the grim hope of surviving another day, but the bright hope of actually living, of building something better. Why are you doing this? He asked quietly. Marguerite was quiet for a moment, then said, because 3 hours ago, I was planning to spend another evening alone in my office, reviewing quarterly reports and pretending that numbers on a spreadsheet were more important than the people who generated them. Then I heard a father speaking Dutch to a doctor about his daughter's health, and I remembered what it felt like to care about something bigger than myself. She paused, her voice growing softer. And because maybe, if I can help one family stay together, stay connected to their heritage while building their future, maybe I can find the courage to call my son. Marcus stood up and extended his hand. Miss Hoffman, I accept your offer. She shook his hand firmly, then surprised him by saying in carefully pronounced Dutch, Dankjewel, Marcus. Voor het herinneren van wie ik. Thank you, Marcus, for reminding me who I wanted to be. 6 months later, Marcus sat in the executive break room reviewing correspondence from Amsterdam while Emma attended the company's on-site daycare program, where she'd made friends and was thriving in ways that made his heart soar. The salary increase had allowed them to move to a real apartment with 2 bedrooms, and Emma's latest medical checkup had shown her still in complete remission. But the best part was watching Marguerite transform from the cold, isolated executive he'd met in the elevator into someone who remembered how to laugh, how to ask about people's families, how to run a company with both profit and purpose. She'd reconciled with her son James, who now worked alongside her to implement more ethical business practices. Her grandson visited the office twice a month, and Marguerite had started learning Dutch again so she could tell him stories in the language of her childhood. Daddy, Emma said, running into the break room after daycare, Mrs. Marguerite taught me a new Dutch word today. Oh, what word? Dankbaar, Emma said proudly. It means being thankful for good things. Marcus smiled, pulling his daughter into a hug. That's a very good word to know. And as he held Emma close, he thought about that night in the elevator when a phone call had changed everything, not just because of the medical results, but because sometimes the most important conversations happen between strangers who discover they're not strangers at all, just people who forgot that kindness is the language everyone understands. no matter where they come from or where they're going.